Good morning and welcome to Sunday Square Off. I'm Bram Resnick. It's a wake-up call for all of us. The city of Phoenix confronting what's been labeled a looming environmental disaster, the threat to our most precious resource, water. Phoenix residents will be asked to pay the bill for our historic drought. On today's show, how Phoenix is dealing right now with the reality of future water shortages and how much that could cost residents. Plus, why some charter school owners are raking in millions of dollars, and it is all perfectly legal. And we'll meet a rare independent candidate who could benefit from the education vote in a West Valley legislative district that is solidly Republican. But first, we're hearing elected and public officials in the nation's sixth largest city warning about a looming crisis for its water supply. The outlook, quote, is terrible. I'm worried about the Colorado River system crashing. Those are the words of Kathryn Sorensen, the City of Phoenix's water director, and she joins me this morning. Welcome to Square Off.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And I'll give my usual disclaimer. Many of you viewers already know my wife is a City of Phoenix employee. Now, I don't think I've heard these kinds of words from any public official, elected official, and certainly not from you about our water situation. These are very dire words. Why now?
So we have long known that the Colorado River system itself is over-allocated. And of course, we've been experiencing about 18 years of drought. So all of that is very well known. I think what's different now is that the scientists are telling us that the Colorado River basin itself is aridifying, becoming more arid. And that means that we're in a different mind frame, a different time where we really need to plan proactively for worst case scenarios, not just shortage.
And those worst case scenarios seem more real. Just give us a little more information. How much of Phoenix's water comes from the Colorado River basin?
So roughly 60% of our supplies actually come from the Salton Verde River system, which is a very resilient system, very well managed here locally. About 40% of our supplies come from the Colorado River system. And as I said, the Colorado River system is over allocated, and that's concerning, not only because we're in drought, but if the basin itself is aridifying, and if we can expect that in the future there will be less flows coming out of that system, that is really a wake-up call for us.
And when you say crashing, what does that mean?
So there's a level in Lake Mead, 895. It's called dead pool, and at that level, water cannot come out past the dam. So there's a lot of energy focused right now on making sure that the Colorado River system doesn't crash, that it doesn't collapse, but it is a real danger. Unfortunately, Lake Mead is shaped like a V. So as water levels decline, they can decline at basically a non-linear rate. We want to guard against that. Okay, so you are preparing for a worst case scenario. You recently rolled out a $1.5 billion plan to spend a lot of money. It's going to spend all that on water infrastructure, specifically a big chunk of it to get the water out of the ground that we've been storing for decades. Yeah, thank you. We have been preparing for shortage for decades. We've been assembling a very diverse water portfolio of alternative supplies that we can rely upon as we go into shortage on the Colorado River. But you're absolutely correct. We expect that we'll spend about $500 million over the next 5 years to make sure that we have the infrastructure in place to move those water supplies, those alternative supplies, where they need to go during shortage.
So here's what got my attention, because we've been hearing about these alternative water supplies, underground, aquifers, water stored. And now we're hearing for the very first time we have to spend $500 million to, pardon the crude metaphor, to build a straw to get that water out of the ground.
So actually, it's not just that we're building a straw to get the water out of the ground. A lot of the alternative supplies that we'll rely on actually are things like some independent rights that the City of Phoenix enjoys on the Salton Verde River system and some others. The bulk of the money will actually be used to improve our transmission and distribution system itself. We will always rely on groundwater as the supply of last resort, because we want to really be careful to save those supplies for the future. But we do need to increase our ability to move water across our system. So that means transmission mains, large pump stations, pressure reducing valves, and other improvements.
But at the same time, I mean, you've said we don't have a way to get that out of the ground.
Well, we have some wells, and we just recently entered into an agreement with the Salt River Project, you may have heard about, where we basically have a first right of refusal on their well capacity. That was also the intent of the Phoenix-Tucson exchange, if you'll recall. So these are all ways for the city of Phoenix to get banked water out of the ground. But then the next step is we have to move it where it needs to go. And
so $500 million worth to make all that happen. How do we know that water is potable? That it hasn't been polluted? So it is, when we pull it out of the ground or move it through the SRP canal system, it is not potable at that point, but that's what our surface water treatment plants are for. Those are state-of-the-art, fantastic facilities that clean the water, make sure it's safe to deliver. And correct me, I think you said this all could take 5 years to build. Yeah, this new infrastructure, this $1.5 billion plan. Well, we're aiming for about 4 years for it to work, to be fully constructed. But let me be clear, we expect to spend about $500 million on Colorado River resiliency efforts. We expect to spend $1.5 billion in total on infrastructure. The balance of that money is really on replacing aging infrastructure, rehabilitating aging infrastructure. Given the warnings we heard from you at the beginning of this segment, are you sure we have 4 or 5 years to get all this in place? I do. I feel very confident about that, and I feel confident that we will have the infrastructure that we need to really avert a crisis. That's our job. We have to make sure that people have safe, clean, reliable water at the tap 24/7, 365, and that's what we'll do. Okay.